My name is Daniel, and running an Airbnb had always been a dream of mine. So when I inherited my grandmother's old farmhouse, nestled deep in the countryside, I saw it as the perfect opportunity to make that dream a reality. Little did I know, my idyllic vision would soon give way to a nightmare beyond my wildest imagination. The farmhouse itself was charming, with its weathered wooden exterior and sprawling gardens. It had been in my family for generations, and I felt a deep sense of pride as I welcomed my first guests through its creaking front door. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly. The guests, a young couple named Mark and Emily, were polite and friendly, eager to explore the tranquil beauty of the countryside. They settled into the farmhouse with ease, and I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful for their positive reviews and glowing feedback. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice strange occurrences around the farmhouse. Objects would go missing, only to reappear in unexpected places. The air seemed to grow thick with tension, as if the very walls of the farmhouse were closing in around us. At first, I tried to dismiss it as my imagination running wild. But as the incidents grew more frequent and more unsettling, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One night, as I lay in bed unable to sleep, I heard a noise coming from the hallway outside my room. At first, I thought it was just the wind rattling the windows, but then I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty house. Heart pounding in my chest, I crept out of bed and tiptoed to the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. With a deep breath, I swung the door open and peered into the darkness beyond. What I saw sent a chill racing down my spine. Standing at the end of the hallway was a figure shrouded in shadow. It was Mark, his eyes wide and unblinking as he stared back at me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. For a moment, we stood there, frozen in place, locked in a silent battle of wills. And then, without a word, Mark turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone in the suffocating silence of the hallway. Shaken but determined, I made my way downstairs, my footsteps echoing through the empty house. I found Emily sitting in the living room, her eyes glazed and distant as she stared blankly at the flickering flames of the fireplace. I tried to speak to her, to ask her what was wrong, but she didn't respond. It was as if she were lost in a trance, trapped in a world of her own making. Terrified and alone, I retreated to my room, my mind racing with fear and confusion. What had happened to Mark and Emily? And what dark secrets lay hidden within the walls of the farmhouse? As the days stretched into weeks, I watched helplessly as the farmhouse descended into chaos. Mark and Emily grew increasingly withdrawn, their once vibrant personalities fading into shadows of their former selves. And then, one night, they vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a sense of dread that hung heavy in the air. Desperate for answers, I searched every inch of the farmhouse, turning over furniture and tearing through closets in search of clues. But try as I might, I found nothing but silence and emptiness. In the end, I had no choice but to accept that some mysteries are beyond our understanding, and that the farmhouse held secrets that would never be revealed. As I locked the door of the farmhouse behind me for the final time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The nightmare was finally over, but the memory of those dark days would haunt me for the rest of my life. And though I may never know what truly happened to Mark and Emily, one thing is certain. The farmhouse holds secrets that are best left undisturbed, lest they awaken from their slumber to wreak havoc once more. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the rolling countryside as my friend Sarah and I arrived at the secluded cottage we had rented for the weekend. Nestled among the trees, its weathered facade exuded a sense of rustic charm that drew us in, despite the growing sense of unease gnawing at the edges of my mind. Inside, the cottage welcomed us with warmth and coziness, the crackling fire in the hearth and the scent of wood smoke promising respite from the outside world. We settled in, unpacking our bags and exchanging excited chatter about our weekend ahead. As night fell, we retired to our respective rooms, each hoping for a peaceful night's sleep. But as I lay in bed, the stillness of the cottage was shattered by a strange sound echoing through the darkness. At first, I tried to dismiss it as the creaking of old floorboards or the rustling of leaves in the wind, but as the noise persisted, growing louder and more insistent, a sense of dread crept over me. Unable to ignore it any longer, I rose from bed and ventured into the hallway, the floorboards creaking softly beneath my feet. The sound seemed to be coming from above, from the attic. I hesitated at the foot of the staircase, my heart pounding in my chest. But curiosity got the better of me, and I began to ascend, each step echoing in the stillness of the night. As I reached the top, I pushed open the attic door and peered into the darkness beyond. What I saw sent a chill down my spine. A faint light flickered in the shadows, casting strange, dancing shapes across the room. And there, in the center of it all, stood a figure, a woman, her form ethereal and insubstantial, yet undeniably real. I called out to her, my voice barely more than a whisper. But she didn't respond, her gaze fixed on something unseen in the distance. For a moment, I was paralyzed with fear, unable to tear my eyes away from the haunting sight before me. But then, as suddenly as she had appeared, the woman vanished, leaving me alone in the oppressive silence of the attic. Shaken but unharmed, I stumbled back to my room and climbed into bed, the events of the night swirling through my mind. Beside me, Sarah stirred, her brow furrowed in sleep. The following morning, I awoke to find Sarah already up, her expression troubled as she recounted her own experiences from the night before. It seemed we had both encountered something inexplicable in the darkness of the cottage. Determined to make sense of what had happened, we spent the day exploring the surrounding area, searching for clues that might explain the strange occurrences. But try as we might, we found no answers, only more questions. As night fell once more, the cottage seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy, the air thick with tension and fear. Doors slammed shut of their own accord, and strange shadows danced along the walls. Terrified and desperate for escape, Sarah and I huddled together in the living room, our hearts pounding in our chests as we listened to the eerie symphony of sounds that filled the air. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the chaos subsided, leaving us alone in the quiet of the night. With trembling hands, we packed our bags and fled from the cottage, our minds reeling with disbelief and terror. As we drove away into the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and malevolent lurked in the shadows, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in its web of darkness. And though we may never fully understand what we encountered in that cottage, one thing is certain. The echoes of the past will haunt us for the rest of our days, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the world of the living from the realm of the dead. My partner Lily and I arrived at a quaint bed and breakfast nestled within a remote village. The inn, draped in the shadows of ancient trees, exuded an eerie charm that whispered of secrets hidden within its time-worn walls. Our room, though cozy, held a chill that seemed to seep from the very foundations of the building. Despite the warmth of the crackling fire, a subtle unease lingered in the air, like a specter haunting the corridors. As the days passed, peculiar occurrences began to unravel the tranquility of our stay. Keys vanished without a trace, shadows danced in the corners of our vision, and an oppressive weight settled upon our hearts. One evening, on the brink of our departure, we stumbled upon a door concealed by layers of dust and neglect. Its presence sent shivers down our spines, a silent testament to the secrets that lay dormant within the inn's ancient walls. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Lily and I searched for the key, our hands trembling with anticipation. And when we finally found it, the heavy metal felt like a portent of the horrors that awaited us on the other side. That night, as darkness cloaked the inn in its embrace, strains of haunting music echoed through the halls. Following the melody, we found ourselves standing before the forgotten door, the air thick with anticipation and dread. With trembling hands, I inserted the key into the lock and turned it, the sound reverberating through the silence like a death knell. As the door creaked open, a wave of cold air washed over us, carrying with it the faint scent of decay. Inside, bathed in the flickering glow of candlelight, stood a figure swaying to the haunting melody, his movements fluid and ethereal. His face was shrouded in darkness, his form nothing more than a silhouette against the dimly lit room. For a moment, Lily and I stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a mixture of fear and fascination. But as the music reached its crescendo, the figure turned towards us with eyes that glimmered like shards of ice, sending a chill coursing through our veins. Without a word, he extended a hand towards us, beckoning us closer with a gesture both graceful and sinister. As every instinct screamed for us to flee, a strange sense of dread settled over us, like a weight pressing down on our chests. We couldn't tear our eyes away from the figure before us, his movements erratic and unsettling. But just as our fingers were about to touch his outstretched hand, a surge of fear jolted us back to reality. Without a word, we stumbled backwards, our hearts pounding in our chest as we backed away from the strange scene unfolding before us. In the dim light of the room, the figure seemed to waver and distort, his features shifting and changing with each passing moment. It was as if he were a mirage, a figment of our imagination brought to life by the shadows. As we fled from the inn, a sense of unease settled over us, like a whisper in the back of our minds. What had we just witnessed? Was the figure real, or were we simply imagining things? The memory of that night would linger with us for years to come, a chilling reminder of the mysteries that lurked in the darkness. And though we tried to rationalize what we had seen, a part of us couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than met the eye.